A soft cry woke John in the dark alley. Rain dripped on broken glass and empty cans. He limped on his single leg toward a black trash bag. Inside, he found a tiny baby wrapped in a torn cloth, shivering and alone. John's heart pounded as he held the child close, feeling its small body shake with fear. He had nothing but his old coat and his stick. Still, he wrapped the baby tight and whispered, "I've got you." In that moment, John knew his life had changed forever. John sat by a cold wall. He heard a soft cry from a trash bag. He moved slowly, leaning on his crutch. He peered inside and saw a baby wrapped in a dirty cloth. The baby stared at him with wide eyes. John's heart felt heavy, but he lifted the child gently. He covered the baby with his coat. The rain fell harder, but he held on tight. He whispered, "Don't be scared." People walked by without looking. John did not care. He had one goal: keep the baby safe. John had no home or food. He walked with the baby in his arms. His leg hurt, but he kept going. He asked for help, but most people walked away. A kind woman gave him a bottle of water. A boy dropped an old blanket. John used these gifts to warm the baby. He found a dry corner under a bench. He cleaned the baby's face with his coat. Then he sang a soft song he barely remembered. The baby stopped crying and closed its eyes. John held him all night, feeling hope return. Early next morning, flashing lights appeared. 2 officers stepped from a car. They saw John holding the baby. They asked questions in loud voices. John explained how he found the child in the trash. At first, they seemed to doubt him. Then one officer softened and wrapped the baby in her jacket. She smiled at John and said, "You did well." They took notes and photos. They promised to find a safe place for the baby. John watched as they drove away. He leaned on his crutch and closed his eyes, wondering what would happen next. With the baby gone, John felt empty. He limped back to his usual spot under the bridge. His stomach growled. His crutch tapped on wet stones. He asked neighbors for spare coins. No one spoke. A dog barked in the distance. John thought of the baby's tiny hands and bright eyes. He wondered if the child was safe and warm. He wrapped his coat tighter and closed his eyes against the cold wind. Though he had lost the baby, John felt a small pride. He knew he had done the right thing. One afternoon, John saw a newspaper boy shouting on the street, "Man finds baby in trash." John grabbed his paper and read his own story. A blurry photo showed his face and crutch. He felt both proud and sad. He kept the paper close to his chest. A woman with kind eyes paused and said, "That boy will be fine." John nodded, but did not say more. He folded the paper and put it in his pocket. Each day after, he checked the newsstand, hoping for an update about the baby he saved. In a cozy home far away, David grew up safe. He never forgot the man who saved him. He asked his foster mom, "Who is the hero who found me?" She showed him the newspaper clipping each year on his birthday. David studied the photo of John. His heart ached to know more. He learned about the man who had one leg and no home, yet gave him a chance to live. David promised himself he would find John one day. He worked hard in school and dreamed of the day they would meet again. Years passed, and David grew tall. He loved math and building things. He finished school with top marks and won a scholarship. He studied engineering in college. He built small machines and models in his dorm room. Each night, He looked at the old newspaper clipping taped to his desk. He told himself, this is for him. After graduation, he got a good job at a firm that built homes. He saved every coin, planning to help the man who once saved him. His dream felt close, but still out of reach. David took a day off and traveled to the city where John lived. He carried the old clipping and a photo of himself as a baby. He walked the same alleys and under the same bridge. He asked vendors and homeless neighbors, "Do you know this man?" Many shook their heads. One old vendor pointed, "He sleeps by the old bridge at night." David's heart raced. He hurried there, leaving his bag and shoes behind. He hoped this was not a mistake. He needed to see John's face again. Under a dim street lamp, David saw John. He sat on a wooden crate, one leg stretched out. He looked tired, but calm. David approached quietly. "Sir?" he said softly. John looked up. His eyes met David's. David showed the photo of himself as a baby. John's hand trembled. Tears filled his eyes. He leaned forward and touched David's cheek. They stood there in silence. Then John bowed his head and whispered, "I remember you." David smiled, his heart full. After all those years, they found each other at last. David led John to a small cafe. They sat at a round table by the window. A waitress served warm rice and meat. The steam rose like a soft cloud. John ate slowly, savoring each bite. David watched and smiled. He felt joy seeing John enjoy real food. After the meal, David paid the bill and said, "I want to thank you for saving me." John shook his head. "I had no choice." David reached out and held John's hand. They left the cafe with full bellies and warmer hearts. That night, David shared his idea. He drew a simple house on paper. "This is for you," he said. The house had one bedroom, a kitchen, and a small porch. There was a little garden by the door. John studied the plan, his eyes wide. "It's beautiful," he whispered. David nodded and explained how they would start building in a week. John felt nervous, but excited. He had never had a home. They shook hands, sealing the promise. Before sleep, John lay on a cart by the street, imagining walls and a roof built just for him. David collected wood, bricks, and paint. He hired local workers and joined them each morning. He told John every step. John listened with a smile and watched the land change. Trees were cut, holes dug, and walls rose. David said, "This is our project." John felt proud and nervous. He said, "I don't know if I deserve this." David placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You saved me when I was alone. Now it's my turn." John nodded and wiped a tear. He could not wait to see the finished home. Hammers rang out each day. Workers lifted beams under the sun. David mixed cement and guided the team. John carried small stones and painted the porch walls. Dust floated in the air, making them cough. They laughed when bricks tumbled and when the paint spilled. Children from the village watched with wide eyes. John taught them how to mix water and sand. David showed them how to draw straight lines. The garden took shape with small plants. Each corner felt like a page in a new story. They worked hard, but hearts were light. On a bright morning, the house stood ready. White walls glowed and the porch beam shone. David handed John the key. "You're home," he said. John's hand shook. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. The floor was smooth and warm. He smiled as sunlight filled the room. He touched the bed, the table, and the small window. Outside, the garden bloomed with simple flowers. John closed the door and sat on the bed, tears rolling down. He had a home for the first time. He whispered, "Thank you, David." John woke to birds singing outside his window. He made tea in his kitchen and ate fresh bread by the table. He read the newspaper on the porch each morning. He watered the small garden and trimmed the plants. Neighbors passed by and waved, calling his name. He smiled and waved back. At noon, David visited to share lunch and news. John felt useful and safe. He placed his crutch by the door and walked without pain. He had a routine and a home. Each day felt like a gift. Word of John's new home spread fast. Friends from the village came to see it. They brought gifts of fruit and flowers. Children ran around the porch, laughing. John told them the story of finding a baby in a trash bag. He spoke of hope and second chances. David stood by, proud and calm. People listened with wide eyes and soft smiles. They asked questions and took photos. John laughed at the attention. He never thought his life would touch so many hearts. He felt loved and part of a caring community. A local reporter arrived with a camera and a pen. She sat with John and David on the porch. She asked simple questions. How did you meet? Why build a home? John spoke softly. I saw a child alone and I helped. David added, he saved my life. The reporter wrote every word. Soon, the story appeared in newspapers and online. People from around the world sent messages. John and David read each one in their home. They smiled at the kindness of strangers. Their simple act had grown into a much bigger story. John and David stood on the porch at sunset. John looked at his new home and whispered, I never dreamed this. David put an arm around him and said, you gave me a life. Now you have a home. They watched the sky turn pink. A soft breeze carried the scent of flowers from the garden. John turned to David and asked, do you think our story can inspire others? If you enjoyed this tale, please subscribe and comment below. Let us know what you feel and share your kind stories too. Thank you.